When General Stanley McChrystal took command of the Joint Special Operations Command (JSOC) during the height of the Iraq War, he inherited the best fighting force the U.S. military had ever assembled. This was the sharp end of the spear: Navy SEALs, Delta Force operators, intelligence experts, surveillance technology so advanced it could watch a cigarette burn out from a mile away. Every part of the machine was polished to perfection. And yet it wasn't working. The enemy, Al-Qaeda in Iraq AQI, was elusive, slippery, and maddeningly unpredictable. McChrystal's forces could raid a building and capture a target at 2 a.m., only to find AQI had reconstituted elsewhere by sunrise. AQI didn't follow the traditional playbook. They didn't have a central headquarters, and their decision-making was lightning fast. They operated as a loose network of small, autonomous cells that could communicate instantly and adapt to changes almost in real time. McChrystal, trained in the time-honored rhythms of military command, found himself in a strange position. He was more efficient than ever, but the results weren't changing. His perfectly tuned machine was being outmaneuvered by what looked, on the surface, like a ragtag collection of extremists. It was as if he had built a sleek, finely engineered sports car and then tried to race it through a swamp against a swarm of dirt bikes. The bikes were winning. That was the unsettling moment when McChrystal realized something fundamental. Efficiency, the crown jewel of traditional military thinking, was no longer enough. The modern battlefield wasn't about rigid plans and centralized orders. It was about complexity, adaptability, and speed. And unless JSOC could change the very way it thought, it would keep losing. From a machine to a living system. To explain the shift he needed to make, McChrystal uses a metaphor that stays with you. Most big organizations, whether military or corporate, are built like machines. They are designed for predictability. You feed in resources at one end, follow a series of well-defined steps, and get the same result at the other. This works wonderfully when the environment is stable and the challenges are known. But AQI wasn't a stable, known challenge. It was an evolving, adaptive threat that could shift tactics overnight. Fighting them with a machine-like structure was like trying to grab smoke with a wrench. Machines break down when the conditions change. Living systems, on the other hand, like ecosystems or gardens, can adjust, evolve, and regenerate. They may look less tidy, but they survive because they are resilient. The challenge was enormous. How do you turn the most hierarchical, disciplined, order-loving organization on Earth, the military, into something that behaves more like a network? How do you keep the discipline and skill that make special operations so formidable, but fuse it with flexibility and trust? This was the heart of McChrystal's journey. Breaking down silos, the birth of a team of teams. When McChrystal looked closely at JSOC, he saw something surprising. They already had incredible teams. Each Special Forces unit, whether SEALs, Rangers, or Delta Force, was a tight-knit, elite group that could operate with stunning precision. But these teams didn't always operate with each other. Instead, they functioned like isolated islands. A SEAL team might execute a flawless mission, but if the intelligence gathered wasn't quickly shared with the Rangers in another city, the opportunity to strike again would vanish. The enemy, meanwhile, didn't have this problem. AQI was interconnected by necessity. Information about a raid in Fallujah could instantly ripple across their network, prompting cells hundreds of miles away to change tactics within hours. McChrystal realized that the problem wasn't the skill of his teams, it was the lack of connection between them. They had to become more than a collection of elite units. They had to become a team of teams. That meant deliberately breaking down silos, building trust across units, and creating constant channels for communication. From need to know, to everyone knows. In traditional military culture, information is power, and power is closely guarded. The need-to-know principle is baked into the chain of command. You only get the information relevant to your task. This keeps secrets safe and ensures that decisions flow through proper authority. But it also slows everything down, and in Iraq, slowness was deadly. McChrystal decided to flip this tradition on its head. Instead of rationing information, he flooded the system with it. He created massive daily briefings, called the ONI for Operations and Intelligence, where thousands of people across the globe would join in via secure video link. Analysts, pilots, operators, and even junior officers all saw the same intel that senior leaders did. Everyone had the same picture of the battlefield. The result was a phenomenon McChrystal calls shared consciousness. When everyone sees the whole picture, they can make better decisions without waiting for orders. If a Ranger unit in Baghdad spotted something relevant to a SEAL team in Mosul, the SEALs could adjust immediately, no memo required. Empowered execution, trust in action. Of course, giving everyone information is pointless if they can't act on it. In the old model, even if a team saw an opportunity, they had to climb the ladder of command to get permission to move. By the time approval came down, the target was often gone. McChrystal replaced this with what he calls empowered execution. Leaders would set clear intent. Here's the goal, here's the context. But leave the specifics of execution to the teams on the ground. If they had the information and understood the intent, they didn't need to wait for a general's blessing. They could move instantly. This was risky. It meant letting go of some control and trusting that the teams wouldn't go rogue. But the benefits were undeniable. Missions started happening faster, and opportunities that would have slipped away were seized in the moment. Trust, it turned out, was a better weapon than micromanagement. From efficiency to adaptability. The modern military loves efficiency, as do most corporations. The idea is to optimize processes so they run perfectly, like clockwork. The problem is that clockwork fails when the clock face suddenly changes shape. McChrystal had to embrace adaptability, even if it looked wasteful at times. This meant accepting redundancy, having multiple units working on overlapping problems so that if one failed, another could step in. It meant running constant simulations and experiments, knowing some would lead nowhere. It meant valuing resilience, the ability to bounce back, over the comfort of a perfectly smooth process. In short, they had to trade a little bit of efficiency for a lot more agility. Lessons beyond the battlefield. The brilliance of Team of Teams is that McChrystal doesn't leave these ideas in the war zone. He draws examples from NASA dealing with space disasters, from hospital systems responding to public health crises, and from corporations trying to survive in markets that shift overnight. Whether you're running a business, a hospital, or a sports team, the principle is the same: complexity changes the game. No single leader can see or control everything. The role of leadership shifts from giving orders to creating the conditions where the entire network can act intelligently without waiting for permission. Final thoughts: the paradox of a general who lets go. By the end of the book, McChrystal has done something remarkable. He has led one of the most hierarchical organizations in the world toward a model that thrives on decentralization and trust. He admits it wasn't easy, the old habits run deep, but the results were undeniable. The paradox is striking. Here is a 4-star general telling you to stop acting like a general. To win in a complex, interconnected world, leaders must stop thinking of themselves as master chess players moving pawns and start thinking like gardeners, creating an environment where the right things grow on their own. It's not about controlling every move. It's about connecting every player. And when that happens, whether in the deserts of Iraq or in a boardroom in New York, the organization becomes something rare, fast, resilient, and capable of outthinking the chaos.